Good afternoon. It's now 12:02. Um, Thanks for everyone that came on. I know that today is a National Day against anti-Semitism, and particularly in the United States. So I know that we had a very large number of people registered for this, but we will, I'm sure many will benefit from the recordings. This segment of our convention was actually created to honor and perpetuate the legacy of Harav Adin Steinsaltz Zecher Tzadik Livracha. One of the very unique accomplishments of Rav Steinsaltz was how he single-handedly made Torah learning so much more accessible for so many people. So what we tried to do with this segment is introduce three very special initiatives and the people that represent those initiatives who are continuing in the spirit of Rav Steinsaltz in a very forward-thinking way, being Marbitz Torah very effectively and with a lot of meaning. So with this in mind, I'd like to introduce our speaker for today. Our first speaker, will be in conversation with him, Rav Ephraim Mintz. Before I go on, I just want to wish Rav Mintz a mazel tov. The wedding of his son was actually last night, and yet he still made Torah. So big mazel tov to you, Rav Mintz, and to your family. May they build a binyan adei ad. Rav Mintz is the founder and director of the Rohr Jewish Learning Institute, which from now on we will refer to as JLI, Jewish Learning Institute. Founded in 1998, JLI now provides what is very compelling learning materials to over 1,600 communities with over 500,000 participants in 9 languages all throughout the world. And all of this is besides for its online presence. It's fair to say that JLI is a preeminent provider of in-person Jewish learning resources in the world. So Rav Mintz, thank you so much for coming on today, especially the morning after your son's wedding. It's an honor to have you with us today, and we'll just jump right in. In your own words, can you just give us a quick overview of what JLI is and what you're doing throughout the world?
Sure, Ravidan. Thank you. First of all, thank you for your wishes, and it's an honor for me to participate in this, the RCA convention, the albeit virtual convention, and to be mishtatef with the Rabbanim and Manhigei Kehilos, the leaders in so many communities, and it's truly, I'm humbled and honored to be part of it. So just to summarize, you've done a fairly good job, Rabbi Dan. We are, as the numbers you shared, we are today at the forefront of Harbatzas HaTorah and bringing Torah, sugis, from sugis in Shas to halacha, to paskim, to hashkafa, you name it, in all areas of Torah, essentially demonstrating Kiheim Chayenu, demonstrating the profound relevance of Torah, hafachba v'hafachba, the koilaba. Torah, as you know, as the Rabbanim present know better than most, how it is meant to shape and guide and mold the life of Klal Yisrael. And that's what we're trying to do around the world in terms of providing that primarily through Chabad centers. That's our mission, being the adult education arm of America's Chabad headquarters. And the numbers of being there we have today in the official program over 2,000 trained certified instructors offering courses, shiurim, seminars in over 9 languages. And beyond that, servicing the 5,000 Chabad centers, but we're also servicing many other community settings in schools and community centers, as you know.
Wow, so this is truly breathtaking in scope. What's the genesis story? How did JLI form as an idea? What did it look like at its earliest stages? And perhaps you could even tell us about some of the milestones along the way.
Right, so the genesis of JLI is actually 3,333 years ago. We just commemorated the Matan Torah. But more specifically, you ask about JLI as an organization, as an institute. So it was actually in 1987. This was a decade during which the Chabad network underwent major expansion. And it was during that year that the Rebbe called for the establishment of centralized central offices to cater to the growing needs of the Chabad centers, the shluchim and shluchos in the field. And following that, later JLI, among many other central bodies in Chabad, came into being. And our goal was to create, develop shiurim, courses, seminars, and train the instructors, secure accreditation, marketing, multimedia, web-based platforms to be there for the manhigei kehilos, for the rabbanim in these communities, so they need not reinvent the wheel, each of them creating their own shiurim, their own seminars, but tap into the oitzer. Of course, every rav, every instructor, every teacher, as your rabbanim well know, need to make it their own, v'sein chalkeinu b'sorasecha, make the class their own, and thus convey it in the best way they can. But the resource to provide them with the vast resources to help them, that was our goal.
So that's that is very inspiring. But when you think about creating learning materials, those could come across as very exciting and can also come across quite dull. And somehow you've managed to really get this all over the world. Obviously, very compelling stuff. What's the secret sauce of JLI?
Great question. So that's a question that we're often asked. But this really, I like to cite the Gemara in Shabbos, the Sugi of Matan Torah, B'shah sha'ol Moshe la'amoroi. And he was challenged by the Malachei Asharis, Tno hoitchal hashamayim. The Malachim were challenging Kaviyachal HaKadosh Baruch Hu, keep Torah in heaven. It was a chenda gnuza that was reserved for the Malachei Elyon. And of course, HaKadosh Baruch Hu turned to Moshe, and he told Moshe, Hachzirim lehem tshuva, Moshe should respond. And Moshe's response is really what drives our work ad etzem hayoim hazeh. Moshe turned to the Malachim and he said, perhaps when it comes to the amkus haTorah, the depth of Torah, the Malachim can reach far beyond the human mind can. But it is the relevance of Torah. It is the practical application of Torah. He turned to them and he said, Maksivbe, what does the Torah say? Kabed esavicha v'esimecha. Klum ava eim yesh beinechem. Do you have parents? Klum masa umatin yesh beinechem. Do you engage in commerce? Are you living in Olam Hazeh? Torah was meant to be given in our world in Olam Hazeh, and you are unable to make it relevant, to make it practical. And that is what won Moshe the oracle. Miyad hoideloi la'Kadosh Baruch Hu. Rabbi Sai, Kvoid HaRabbanim in the RCA. You know, we all know those who are fortunate to be in the rabbinate, the manhigei kehilos, that what's equally important to the depth of Torah study and teaching is our sacred responsibility to demonstrate the relevance of Torah, to make it relevant and practical, to take a sugi in Baba Metzia, a halacha in Choshe Mishpat, an Agadata in Sanhedrin, a Sha'al Shuvas, a Rashba, and while engaging in the Amkus HaTorah, appreciating the depth of the Chazal, to demonstrate that Kiheim Chayenu. And I can tell you, Rav Idan and Kvoid HaRabbanim joining us today, and you see this in your shiurim. I'm not telling you anything you don't know. But the more we are able to make it relevant, the more we can demonstrate how Torah indeed is Kiheim Chayenu Va'orech Yameinu. And we use multiple gateways and entry points to do so. For example, we have secured over the years accreditation for attorneys, for psychologists, for physicians, and we have tens of thousands of Achenu Bnei Ubnos Yisrael who may have otherwise not attended a Torah class, a seminar, a course, a shir. So they may come in lechatchila, you might say shalom lishma. They may come because they're interested to secure their credits for the American Bar Association or the AMA as continuing education units. But Rabbi Sai, once they come in and they see, yes, as we'll discuss in a moment, perhaps we'll get to the professionalism, the cutting edge tools, but once they get to see how Torah is not something archaic, something that perhaps only has historic significance, but something that speaks to Hayoim La'asoisam, they can be better parents, better spouses, better children, better in the workforce, better human beings. And Torah indeed is designed for that purpose. It's not a chemda gnuza, but it's meant to be incorporated into masa umata and ava'im, into daily life. And it belongs to them, Morasha Kehilas Yaakov. It belongs to every single one of Achenu, Bnei Ubnos Yisrael. It's their treasure to unleash, and it's our schus to help them unleash it.
Yeah, if we have time at the end, I'll share a couple of anecdotes about JLI's materials here in Ottawa and that exact impact and effect that that they are having. But you spoke about another point, the professionalism, the cutting edge nature to JLI's resources. I wanted to talk about that for a moment, specifically in the spirit of Rav Steinsaltz. He affected tremendous Harbatzas HaTorah by thinking outside of the box, doing things a bit differently. What has JLI done in that way, that forward-thinking way, to be Marbitz Torah so effectively?
It's interesting you mentioned Rav Steinsaltz, who we had a very close working relationship with at the JLI. He oftentimes addressed our students in person and online, and he was very involved. If you've ever seen a JLI textbook or course or seminar, chances are his name, his teachings, his writings are quoted oftentimes, multiple times. You know, Rav Idan, it was in the 1960s when Rav Steinsaltz, Zchus Yagen Aleinu, Zecharnu L'Vracha, was beginning his career in Harbatzas HaTorah and engaging with some of the creme de la creme of Israeli society, among them Chavrei HaKnesset, great academics who weren't necessarily loimdei daf yomi, shall we say. And one of the elderly Hasidim who had just recently emigrated from Russia wrote to the Rebbe. And he wrote to the Rebbe saying that we encountered this young fellow by the name of Adin Steinsaltz, a Chassid, who is engaging and teaching Torah, but Chassidus, deep concepts in Chassidus, but he's using modern day terminology that we've yet to see. We've yet to see someone take these ideas and bring it home in such a way, and he's able to engage, indeed, as you said, thinking out of the box. And they were waiting to see what the Rebbe's response was. It should come as at no surprise to you and your esteemed audience that the Rebbe not only responded to them, but strongly encouraged Rav Adin to continue his path, to continue doing precisely what he was doing, to find the oisius. We know it's all about the branding, the packaging, finding the right language to demonstrate. You might even say, Rav Idan, that some of those elderly Hasidim were arguing, Tna hotcha l'shamayim, keep Torah in heavenly terms, keep it in those esoteric terms we've been accustomed to. But Rav Adin argued, no, we're going to bring it down as Moshe Rabbeinu b'doiroi argued that Torah is meant to penetrate, Torah is meant to be made relevant to Masa Ummatan, to every area of life. And Zochar Rav Adin, he was Zoicha to have those oisius and to demonstrate through speech and through his profound pen, to bring those concepts of Torah. And this is why he attracted and continues to attract La'achar Ptirasoi, through his works, through his books and his classes, tens, if not hundreds of thousands of Jews who are connecting to that message, because Torah is not being left to Nahot Chal HaShamayim, but it's being brought down and made relevant. And that's essentially the greatest challenge we all have as Rabbanim, as teachers, as Mechanchim, to find the oisios, to find the terminology, to make Torah, to demonstrate the profound relevance of Torah. He was indeed a dugma chaye, a remarkable living example of that. Zchuso yogein aleinu.
That was a tremendous tribute to Rav Steinsaltz. Thank you for sharing those words. And continuing in that theme, obviously technology and advances in technology and new platforms that we have available to us would seem to be very effective ways of spreading Torah.
Good.
How is JLI engaged in and using these new types of platforms to get that message out?
Absolutely, absolutely, as we all are, and ought we not. We all know the Medrash, "Lo nivra zahav ela lemeleches hamishkan." If we think about it for a moment, taking that Medrash very seriously, every addition in social media, in technology, in web development, HaKadosh Baruch Hu created it so that you and I and our colleagues around the world who are Melachta Meleches Shamayim, our shlichus, our mission, our achrayus is to utilize every cutting edge form of technology, so social media, to convey and to attract more and more fellow Achenu Bnei Ubnos Yisrael to Torah, to mitzvahs. And yes, we do so, we attempt to do so at every given opportunity. It comes no surprise to you. The Rebbe, as you know, was at the forefront early on in the development of technology, emphasizing the Medrash I cited, like nivra zahav ela lemeleches hamishkan. That this is why HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it may be used for other purposes, but that's not what it was created for. And therefore, yes, whether it's pre-lesson, post-lesson, in the lesson, when we teach Torah, for example, we could, and I know many of your Rabbanim do, we incorporate PowerPoints, video to engage every type of learner using the multiple intelligence approach to engage every type of students that ish bal yedar. After class, we have post-lesson sites for every course so they can continue their study, watching videos, reading articles, even reviewing the materials, the PowerPoints and video shows during class. And of course, marketing. The more we can attract, the more we can bring in all of us. Imagine for a moment a Rav and a Kehillah. We all have our members, but we know how many are not members yet. We know how many are not engaged or may come only once a year to Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. How can we how can we entice those to come once a week, twice a week to study Torah? Whether it's in a group, the Chavrusa, we have a tremendous achrayus, and the HaKadosh Baruch Hu, along with that achrayus, is giving us the tools, social media and multimedia, and all the advancements in technology to help us reach, teach, uplift, and inspire Achenu Bnei Ubnos Yisrael.
So if you don't mind, I'd just like to probe just a little bit more, because as I said, when you think about JLI, your accomplishments are truly breathtaking. Is there singular achievements that you can tell us about that you look back and say that was a huge step forward? That was pretty brilliant, if I may say so myself. Were there any of those moments that helped generate the enormous success that JLI has seen?
It's interesting you ask about what is a singular achievement. So as you mentioned in your opening, we just passed the 500,000 number of unique students who have taken our courses. And we have, as you know, we developed not only for adults, but we have a robust team developing content for teenagers who speak a totally different language, right? Taking Rav Steinsaltz, as you mentioned, finding the modern terminology speaks to a teenager, college students, Sinai Scholar Society, and the multiple other programs we have on over 370 campuses. The young professionals speak a different language. So I would say there's many numbers we can quote, but really more important than the 500,000 number, which is not an insignificant number. I'm reminded by a story with Rav Chaim Gutnick, Olav Shalom, from Melbourne, Australia. It was in the early 60s, and he was visiting the Rebbe from Australia, and the Rebbe strongly encouraged him to offer courses, shiurim, for the Melbourne community on Taharas HaMishpacha, on mikveh and family purity. And he told the Rebbe, this is not going to be very popular in Melbourne. I find myself, this is not going to work to do a public announcement of courses and seminars on this subject. It'll be very difficult. People would not show up. The Rebbe nevertheless urged them to please consider offering this class, this series of shiurim. And so he did. He returned to Melbourne. He announced a series on Taharas HaMishpacha. And guess what, Ravidan? One woman showed up. Of course, during his next visit to New York, he tells the Rebbe, you remember we had this discussion? Guess how many women showed up? all but one woman, and the Rebbe turned to Rav Chaim and said, Rav Chaim, how many mothers do you think was needed to give birth to Moshe Rabbeinu? One mother gave birth to the Manig, to Moshe Rabbeinu B'Doroi. And I like to say, when you ask what is the singular greatest achievement of JLI, Rav Idan, when we receive reports, and we receive them constantly, that there's one Jew, whether in Boston or Bombay, one Jew, whether in Greenwich or Glasgow, who decided to keep Shabbos, who decided to make Torah study a daily activity for a half hour a day, who decided to send a child to receive a Jewish education, who decided not to cremate a parent or a grandparent. Every one of those singular achievements is worth Kol HaTorah Kula, is worth the entire JLI. And now you take that one mother of Moshe Rabbeinu, that one person, that one Jew, who in Augusta, Georgia, or in Bangkok, or in Copenhagen, and multiply that by tens, if not hundreds of thousands of times. That is the most important singular achievement. And we ought to look at every Jew, that the world was created for that yachid, for that individual. And we have the shlichus to reach out to, especially Rabbanim who were zoicha, melachta melecha shamayim, to be manhigei kehilois, who essentially follow the path and the seat of Moshe Rabbeinu in their community. Our tafkid is to find, to scout that one Jew, and by extension, inspire, uplift their family, their neighborhood, their community. And you know, Rabbi Dan, as we speak, I'm reminded, there's a misconception among some who think, and this is really applicable to all of us, we're all involved in Avodas HaKodesh, Kiruv, etc. I need not emphasize how important it is to us, especially in Chabad, but to all of us by providing opportunities for mitzvahs for our fellow Jews. Chabad is oftentimes known for offering a mitzvah on the spot for people on the go. And that is true. The Rebbe, as you know, the 10 Mivtzoyim campaigns to provide those opportunities at every given opportunity to our fellow Jews. But you know, what's less known is that the Rebbe actually said that the most effective way to uplift, to be Mekarev Vayid, to Torah mitzvahs, the most effective tool that we have in our arsenal is Limud HaTorah. In fact, of all the Mivtzoyim campaigns that the Rebbe launched, the Rebbe used a term which I want to share with you today, a term that's not only unique to Chabad, it should be unique to every Rav, every Manig. The Rebbe said, "Einnehmen die Welt mit Torah." We have to conquer the world with Limud HaTorah, which means Rav Idan and Kloider Rabbanim. Among all the Mivtzoyim and opportunities we have, the only miftzah, the only initiative that has the ability to conquer, to uplift, to inspire a Jew. In the words of the Rebbe in a famous talk in 1985, the Rebbe said, Yeshno derech kalo yoiser, there's an easier, more effective way to Mekarev Vayid, more than the Mivtzoyim, more than even putting film on this Jew on Fifth Avenue. And we do that, we all do that. But more effective than that, the Rebbe said, is lahasik esichloi b'seichel haTorah, to engage his mind with words of Torah. Because once you engage that most precious possession that mankind has, you engage kol ha'adam, and you essentially alter their life. And you know, when we learn with whether a chavrusa, we give a shir in our community, a large shir, a small shir, when we engage with our fellow Yid, we learn a Gemara, a Rishoin, a Achroin, a Maharal, a Shalah, a Rashba, a Rambam, a Tosfos. We're not just giving them information. There's a beautiful vort I saw in Rab Nachman Breslov. It says a beautiful vort. We all know the Gemara, it's most known concerning Rashbi, Rab Shimon ben Yochai, but it's also brought down in other sugis about Rav Sheshes and Rav Yochanan, a very bizarre term in Chazal, when they encountered a person that wasn't very friendly, that perhaps deserved to be punished for whatever reason, but Chazal use a term, Nosan Einov Boy V'nase Gal Shalatzomos. Rab Shimon ben Yochai put a gaze, looked at that person, v'nasa gal shlat he expired. And the Mefarshim asked, the term is very unusual. Nosan einov boy. He put his eyes in him. It's a beautiful word for Rav Nachman. He says as follows: Rav Shimon ben Yochai, or Rav Sheshes, or Rav Yochanan, they encountered a person who Nebuch was not behaving properly. Do you know what they did? Nosan einov boy. They took the eyes, they took their own eyes, the eyes of Rav Shimon ben Yochai, and they gave their own eyes to that person. So that person could begin to look at themselves and the world around them through the lens of the Rashbi, through the lens of Rav Sheshes. And Rabbi said, you and I know, imagine we would have for a moment the opportunity to see ourselves, not through our own eyes, but through the eyes of a Gadol B'Yisrael, Rav Shimon ben Yochai, Rav Sheshes. Our world would change instantly. Rabbi said, when we learn Torah with a fellow Yid, we're not just giving them information. We're allowing them to see themselves, to see the world around them through the eyes of a Rashba, through the eyes of the Rambam, through the eyes of the Maharal, the Shalah HaKadosh, the Baal HaTanya. That opportunity is something that we have every day. I oftentimes cite the words of Harav Soloveitchik, who cited the words of his teacher in Chaslovich when they were learning Parshas Vayigash. Hayesh lochem of. Yosef asked Yehuda, do you have a father? Asked his Melamed of the Harav Soloveitchik, who doesn't have a father? Everyone has a father. What was the question? Hayesh lochem of. And of course, he explained, and Harav Soloveitchik beautifully in his shiurim explained, the question that he was asking him was, were they origin conscious? Were they seeing themselves behind themselves, seeing themselves as being part of something far greater, the lineage of a Hayesh Lachem of? When we engage in Limud HaTorah, when we offer a shir, and we do so regularly, we're not just giving information, more information, we're giving our fellow Yidden the opportunity to connect to the Hayesh Lachem of. We're allowing them to ask the question and to help them answer the question.
This is we could listen to your Divrei Hisayrus all day, your incredible insight all day. I see that there are some questions in the chat. I'm gonna send them off to you after the convention, after the session is over. I think there are some important questions that people have been asking, but as of right now, I just want to tell you that here in Ottawa, we see the impact of JLI, and I'm sure many other Rabbanim see the same impact, and we strive to incorporate that into our own Harbatas HaTorah, all these lessons that you taught, and it's a big honor to have you with us today. Thank you so much for making the time, and again, a resounding mazel tov on the simcha of last night, the chassan of your son. Mazel
Thank you very much, and I want to take this opportunity to wish you, Rav Idan, and Rav Mark, and the leadership of the Estados Rabban, the RCA, and you, your families, your communities, incredible increased hatzlacha in your melacha, melecha shamayim. We are essentially shutfim. And I know I have many chaverim in the RCA, dear, tired chaverim, who are oisik yoimim v'layla, and their tremendous avodas hakodesh, and this gives me the opportunity to wish you and wish them, wish all of us. We should have the continued tools, the koyach, the health, the opportunity to take Torah, to unleash Torah from its chemda gnuza status, and make Torah accessible to more and more of Achenu Bnei Bnos Yisrael. And to conclude with the word of Rav Shimon Shkop, B'cha choismin v'loy bahem, says Rav Shimon Shkop. HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Avram, you know how we will be choisim the golus? B'cha choismin, with Jews like you, Avram, not with people like Yitzchak and Yaakov who were born into Kedusha v'Taira. With people like you, B'cha Avram Avinu, who came to Yiddishkeit, who discovered Yiddishkeit later in life. B'cha choismin, with you, people like you, Avram Avinu, you will be the ones to help us finish choismin, to be choisim and misayim this golus. May we indeed be zoiche to siyum hagolus. We're Mola ha'aretz deyes Hashem kamayim layom chasem. Yasher koyach for the schus.